Good afternoon, Scott Riley, T3 Live. Welcome to today's recap. So pretty much a quiet day with all said and done. The big excitement was Apple and the news that it won the sweeping victory over Samsung. But really, you had to be involved in it to get opportunity, especially from the long side. I think more intraday traders made money from the short side there, but that was a hard thing to do considering the news that was out there. But all in all, I'll get into that trade a bit after. I tried to do a little mid-afternoon update just to show you the intraday chart pattern there, so this way you could figure out if there was going to be opportunity into the close, which there just wasn't. As far as the S&P, we tried to go strong, after into the afternoon, and then we traded off. I was short the spiders most of the day, and we closed on the lows, and I just covered it just because today's one of the first few days that I'm going to be actually flat. I don't see any edge right here, but if you take a look at the chart, I would say short term. If someone said it's red dog, you had to take a position long or short overnight. I think it would be short overnight. If you look at here, this is the outside day through that 1422, hit a high of what, 1426. Then you saw some weakness. We came down, tested the 21-day moving average. Remember this accelerated uptrend that we talked about? It broke to the downside here. And then actually today, if you look at it right now, all this kind of looks like a back test of that accelerated uptrend, and it somewhat failed here. And you could also say, if you're looking for bearish arguments, technically, that you had a small, or you had a lower high, like here's your high, here's your lower high. So we'll see, what it leads to. So on a short-term basis, overnight, if I needed to take positions, which I don't need to do, it's the last week going into Labor Day. It's been an unbelievable month. I would say short-term, maybe you could have been short, but obviously it's not compelling enough for me to do it. Then here's your 21-day again, and so I guess if you look at it this way, here's your outside day, here's your follow-through weakness, there's your little reversal on Friday. Right here was that trade to switch some gears. If you wanted to do it really short term, when it went through Thursday's low of 1400, went to 1398, you had a tiny bit of follow through early morning, and then it just ran out of gas. And now today, you could see on a short term level again, it went through 1413, hit as high as 1416, came back below it. So, really scalpy short term negative, but that's about it. So as far as the action, Apple really was, the headline of the day, and there was no intraday action. Very, very small micro type scalps, but nothing to sink your teeth into the way we've been able to do over the course of the past few weeks, ever since, that earnings miss where we traded into the gap and went. It's been a great trade. So today, the ones who were really rewarded were the ones who took a position last week as you saw that it held that 650 area when you saw that new range getting developed for what could have been a great intraday move through 670, 675. It didn't happen that way. It opened above. And then today, it was just too much on a summer, late August day to get some extra momentum. So we'll have to gauge it moving forward. You look at Apple now, and here is today's action. Closed a little bit off the lows of the day, but well off the highs. So, but what are we? We're still somewhat above the breakout area, which you have to treat as a zone. So here is that zone. That was 674.88. We're still, decent sized gap here. So we'll see what happens the next few days if it could hold it. Perhaps we get some kind of nice entry if it trades below, just say 673.54, puts in a little bar, comes back above it. Kind of like what happened here, where we weren't sure if we would get more downside, but we didn't get it. We saw a nice reversal, or kind of like we saw here. Remember that big move off that, here's your earnings shortfall, went through this what was that level? Yeah, it was 580.80. And then after this reversal here, we weren't sure how far it would go down, and then you had a nice little red dog reversal here using this 603 as your pivot entry. So held the gap, continued. So we'll see right now what goes on. What kind of action can we get here? Does it go sideways and digest this recent move? Does it come in and fill a portion of this gap here, which Apple hasn't been able to do to signify maybe it does need a rest? Or again, does it just a little sideways and then you go above 680.87? So at this point, you go to the 5-minute chart, which I showed intraday, which was your intraday action in Apple, and really nothing. It gapped up. Tried to go above 680, couldn't find any friends, came in, so it was more of a micro short versus a micro long. I did tweet that I was long overnight, both accounts. I sold some above 680, some above 681. And then, after getting flat when it broke this 675 area right on this bar, I'm like, you know what, I'll get flat, I'll figure it out. You then had your pivot right there where it held a portion, came back above it. All afternoon long, it tried to hold this support. I was long a little bit in here saying, you know what, if we could break above 678, I'll add to it. But what happened? It dribbled lower. And I just said, you know what, it's not worth it right now. It did come a little bit off the lows the last few seconds of the day. It's still holding a big portion of this gap. So tomorrow, we'll figure out what the story is. If the futures open down, if it opens down, probably goes positive for a cash flow trade. If it trades above 678, I probably start getting involved a little bit. Then above 6887, that's when you add for momentum. And then if it opens below, this is your pivot to see whether or not, what type of action we get. And then the moving averages come up to 671. And then here's your, the gap from Friday's close. So still decent size. So anyway, moving on to like a Google. I came in today, I was like, you know what? I think Google will be fine. Apple's not going to go after everyone, because then all of a sudden you'll start hearing monopoly talk, and they don't want to be another Microsoft where everyone goes after them because they're too good at what they do, which was what Microsoft was back then. So anyway, I looked at the chart of Google. I'm like, let's see what happens here as far as the buyers and sellers. I think this upper flag, this upper area, I think 660 was what we talked about. If you go to Google, you will see that on the VTF we did catch a nice trade there. And look at this. This was the line I drew this morning right here. I said if Google wants to be really strong, they'll come in and buy it and take it off the lows. And look where we came to. We came right into this area. Didn't even get to the 21-day moving average and closed pretty well. And on an intraday basis, I'll just show you some of the chart. This was a nice methodical move. Doesn't get much better than this, where you put in your pivot low right there. So here was your higher low. So I got involved right there. That's when I started buying it right around 664. And then I think this was my move into 668, sold some, and then all of a sudden it started to flag. I'm like, wow, we might even get a little bit more here. It could also take out the morning high, and this was entry number one. If you waited for confirmation of here is your low, here is your higher low, this is when it broke this small little trend, gave you a nice methodical cash flow move, and then here is your flag. Pulled in, didn't really come back in. Still, if you want to talk about a little uptrend from the open, there you go. Held it right there. This was a nice trade right here. Then it traded through the gap. I think I took some of it off right there above 671, and you saw it on the VTF again. And then, then just like the market, became a lethargic mess. So this was your calculated morning trade on an intraday tactical basis. Filled a decent size portion of this gap, and then really, just didn't do much into the close. So tomorrow we'll figure it out. We'll see if there's a trade, if it consolidates higher, if we can get a trade through today's high tomorrow to fill a bigger portion of the gap for cash flow. And at least now we have a new point of reference on where it held. If you go to the daily chart, again, I think Google did a pretty good job absorbing what people thought was going to be a disaster type day to the downside. Amazon tried to push through and didn't have enough juice, traded through the price point of 246.87, and then came back down a little bit. Quick little trade, but after a move that we've seen, it's hard to really add on for momentum here. We haven't seen much momentum this week, so Friday was more of your day for momentum there. As far as Baidu, some guys on my chat room were talking about Baidu. Last week you saw that drastic move from Deutsche Bank. The downgrade went to 110, and since then it's methodically going higher. I still think it's a broken stock, but some guys made some money watching the relative strength. You look at the chart here at Baidu. Here is that that big move lower. This was that upper area which you could have used as a nice stop right there, 128-ish. Some guys actually even got short there. I tried buying it right around here. Thank goodness for stops. That 121 was my area. I got out, and now it might try and work its way back up to 121.21, but it's a dangerous stock lately, and I'm just going to avoid it. Just to follow up on the metals, today silver tried to lead again, which you really want to see gold lead silver, not silver lead gold, just because it takes a lot more money to move around gold than silver. So when you see gold lead, that shows you more commitment to the actual metal move. So I just think that's healthier. But we did have a big move last week. Silver tried to push through the highs of last week, and then I was trying to play gold long, and it just had no power, so got stopped out, lost a little. If you look at the chart of silver now, I don't think it's anything drastic, but to me, you now have somewhat of a shooting star or an outside day here, a push through 29.88, made a high, squeezed some people out of the 200-day, closed near the lows. So to me, that's always a short-term sell signal. So I didn't use that. I didn't find it. I just used strength as my sell signal. I sold on this day. This was your buy. This was my sell. And now all of a sudden here is that outside day. So let's see how much of it gives back. If it holds the gap here of 29.46, it's really strong. I might need a little bit more time to let the moving averages catch up. It could even still fill this gap and be, still composure positive to the upside considering where it came from. I would say though that they have to protect at least this gap in order to keep some intermediate momentum guys in there. So I would say very impressive would be to hold this, but I would say I give it better than 50-60% that it comes into this gap, and perhaps we could be a buyer right around this 29. This day to me shows me a rest is due. Gold, you'll see that it was weaker. Couldn't even push through the highs here because it needs a lot more money to get it going and close near the lows. So to me, if I had to pick a choice of being long or short overnight, it would have been short, but I decided to do nothing. It's extended from the moving averages here. I'd love to see the opportunity to buy gold into this area and then have it continue. So here was your calculated long. Here was a secondary play right there. Now it's flagging, and with the small outside day we saw in silver, I would just be a little careful here. Hopefully you took some off because I did tweet around 2:30 or so that I thought gold and silver, actually I think I said silver, was tired, and that was before it traded below Friday's high or Thursday's high of 29.88. Goldman Sachs, hanging on. This is just not a lot of action here, but it's still in the game, moving higher. You just can't add on strength. JP Morgan, really not doing much, just lethargic type of bank trade. So there's not a lot of action here, and who would expect it? This the last week in August, which has been a very pleasantly surprising month for those who look for movement. There's been a lot of movement, a very sector-specific, stock-specific, great technical trading market for the last 3-4 weeks. You've been able to trade, hold things. I think for the better than average amount of days in August, I had anywhere from 4 to 7 positions, and I think Sperling had like 15 to 30 positions. And then going into last Tuesday, brought it back down to more active type trading for cash flow versus having risk on, because we're trying to figure out whether or not this upper range could hold and what type of movement we get as we approach Jackson Hole, as we approach all the decisions that Europe has to make going into September. I think still on a macro basis, I like the market long. I would put, everyone likes when I put my 70% stamp, I would put a 70% chance that we close 1450 to 1470 this year, and I put that 70% chance that by 2015 we see 1700 in the S&P versus the bear argument of 1000. But again, we all have our specialties. I trade from an intermediate trend basis, and at this point I think there's no edge right here to have massive positions. We just had a nice move. We're still we broke the accelerated trend line, but we still have the more relaxed uptrend that I think we could buy back, but we'll figure it out. Again, take some time. It's the last week. Recharge those batteries, spend some time with your family and friends, and the market will be here after Labor Day. And I think if you are here, just don't overtrade. I think a lot of guys gave back a lot of the money that they made overnight, because we did take positions in Apple. You saw it in the virtual trade for a lot of guys joined in, and we were pleasantly surprised. But then the intraday trading all across the board was nothing from nothing and easy to give back. So if you're going to be here, make sure it's compelling, do less, and I would advocate taking some time, take the vacation, and come back after Labor Day. Have a great night. See you tomorrow.